I like that.
Ooh, that got some bass to it, don't it?
I like that.
I love that joint. All right. So, listen. Listen. Did you ever play the game of freeze tag?
No.
How many of y'all play freeze tag?
Yes, sir.
Right? How do you play it?
Stay on all fours.
Come here. How do you play freeze tag? How do you play freeze tag?
Okay, there's a person who's it. What's up? Okay, and then it's like tag, except when you tag them, you have to freeze, and then people who aren't tagged can untag them.
Can unfreeze them. Right, okay, so that's freeze tag, right? I used to play this game all the time at elementary school. Maybe you have too, right? But the object is to freeze everyone until the entire opposing team is frozen. Now, I have to admit, I cheated from time to time. Come on, anybody else with me on that? We wanted to win. Right. We wanted to win so bad. We wanted to win so bad that we changed the rules. Well, here's the deal. Life is kind of like a game of freeze tag. We have our team, and what's our team? Christ followers. And then you got the opposing team, which is what? The devil's morons, right?
Yes, sir.
And the morons, they're trying to freeze every believer. All right, freeze and define, what that means is this. Incapable, freeze. Here's what it means, definition, incapable of being changed or moved. And it's not available for present use. So that's the mission of our opposing team. They're to freeze us. Anybody remember Dr. Freeze from Batman? I'm a Batman freak. You've heard me talk about it before. You ever remember Dr. Freeze, a.k.a. Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Dr. Freeze's greatest weapon was putting people in a frozen, and they called it a cryogenic state. So listen, 86% of teenagers who attend non-Christian colleges, they lose their faith before graduation.
College or high school?
College. 86% of teenagers who attend non-Christian colleges lose their faith before graduation. Why?
I don't go to college.
Why?
Why would they be drinking a
Because they've been frozen.
Oh.
Their spiritual life halted.
That's why they didn't go to college there.
Their spiritual life halted. They're held in some cryogenic state. And so my hope for everyone here, that when you reach the place where you graduate, when you get out of high school, right, and every member of your family or friend, is that we never become frozen on our spiritual journey. Even right now where you are, my prayer is that you never become, and my hope is that you never become frozen on your spiritual journey. Listen, Moses, and you can switch it to the next screen. Moses in Exodus 3, we just put Exodus 3, Moses in the burning bush. You can go back and read the story, but Moses in Exodus 3, he came face to face with a burning bush that was not being consumed. It was on fire, but it wasn't burned. And I shared this with you a couple weeks ago. But that really didn't bother him. That's kind of weird, right? You see a bush burning, but you see a bush on fire, but it ain't burning. That's kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
Well, a few moments later, the bush carries on a conversation with Moses. That really didn't bother him either. Now that's even stranger, right? A bush that's on fire but not burning is carrying on a conversation with you. That's crazy, right? Then the bush says, I am the God of your father. All of a sudden, Moses freezes. Oh, snap. What's going on? Right? He's experiencing one of the greatest spiritual moments of his life. And what happens? He freezes. There were really only two options at this point for Moses. there were really only two options at this point for Moses. It was to either stay frozen, or move forward. Okay, you see, Moses, he could have stayed in a frozen state. Yeah, he made some excuses in the Moses moment, but what did he do? He chose to move forward. He refused to stay frozen. And listen, there's also been some great people of our society that they refused to stay frozen by opinions, people's opinions, and they move forward. Listen, I think there is a world market for maybe 5 computers. Thomas Watson, chairman of IBM, 1943. Here's another one. There's no reason anyone would want a computer in their home.
Right?
Ken Olsen, president, chairman, and founder of Digital Equipment Corporation in 1977. This telephone has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication. The device is inherently of no value to us. And that was Western Union. They sent an internal memo in 1876. We hear this stuff and we're like, yo, that's crazy, right? Here's another one. We don't like the sound, or we don't like their sound. And guitar music is on its way out. And that's Decca Recording rejecting the Beatles in 1962. Airplanes are interesting toys, but have no military value. That came from Markel Ferdinand Foch, professor of strategy, way back when, okay? Everything that can be invented has already been invented. That's what Charles Duell said. He's the U.S. Office of Patience, 1899. In 1899, he said that everything that has been invented, that's going to be invented, was invented. Well, that's not the case, right? Look, in 1893, it says, Lord Kelvin, president of the Royal Society, said X-rays, talking about the X-rays that you get on your bones and stuff, will prove to be a hoax. And that's not the case, right? We use X-rays. Okay? Unworthy of the attention of practical and scientific men, British Parliamentary Committee report on Thomas Edison's electric light bulb. Okay? But wow, right? When you think about these things that took place, I'm so glad that these guys moved forward, despite the criticism, right? Despite people saying, nah, everything that is going to be invented has already been invented. Despite the fact that people say, oh man, we don't need X-rays, that's a hoax, or telephones, like there's too many kinks to work out. But look at, man, we utilize that every single day. The internet, our computers. Aren't you glad that those guys move forward?
Yeah.
But aren't you glad that those guys move forward? Well, listen. Here's where we get into it here. Get into the meat of it. Jesus also had some Moses moments. He also had some Moses moments. He could have froze. He could have froze, but not Jesus. He chose to always move forward. No matter what life threw at him, what did Jesus do? Always move forward. We're going to look at Jesus' life according to the Gospel of John. This is what John wrote, right? And we're just going to run through it. We're not going to read every passage, but we're going to kind of go through what each thing says in each passage. So, Jesus' life according to John. Well, in chapter 1, he called the disciples, right? Listen, in chapter 2, he changed water into wine. In chapter 2, he also clears the temple out. In chapter 5, he heals a man that couldn't move for 38 years. It's pretty remarkable, right? In chapter 5, verse 16 and 17, the Jewish leaders at the time, they persecuted him. And he still moved forward because in chapter 6, he feeds 5,000 people. Also in chapter 6, check this out, he walks on water. In chapter 6, his own disciples desert him. Also in chapter 6, a demon-possessed man is set free. In chapter 8, people trying to kill him. In chapter 9, he heals a blind man. In chapter 11, he raises Lazarus from the dead. Also in chapter 11, there's more plots. Later on in verse 45, plots to kill Jesus. In chapter 12, what does he do? He teaches great biblical truths. Even though there's all these plots to kill him, he moves forward. Chapter 13, he empowers his disciples by washing their feet. In chapter 15, he's hated by the world, but he still moves forward. He's not frozen by that. In chapter 17, he has intense times of prayer. In chapter 18, he's betrayed by a friend. In chapter 18, then he's also... first of all, who betrayed him? Who was the friend that betrayed him? Judas. You got it. Okay, and then also later on in chapter 18, there's another close friend that denied him. Who was that?
Oh, that was Peter.
Peter. You got it. In chapter 19, he's killed, crucified. In chapter 20, he's resurrected from the dead. And then in chapter 21, he inspires his followers again. Now listen, what if Jesus froze? Think about it. What if Jesus gave up and said, man, the cost is just too great? Not Jesus. He continued to move forward. He didn't stop because he knew his life's mission to seek and to save those who are lost. So, here's a life principle, and I want everybody to catch this. Everybody listen, a life principle. You're good. Alright, here's a life principle. Something set on fire can never freeze. There it is right there. Something set on fire can never freeze. So listen, honor God in your speech, in your thoughts, and in your actions. Live life with a burning passion for God. Something set on fire can never freeze. Live life with a burning passion for God. Remember, nothing's ever fun if you do it halfway. Don't be a halfway stepper, man. Something set on fire can never freeze. Listen, you only have one life to live. Use it well. Use it well. Amen?
Amen.